Thank you for joining us. This is the Young Eco-Socialists of the Green Party US. And today we have the honor of interviewing candidate for Denver City Council, Annie Martinez. Annie, thank you for being here with us.
Oh, thank you. I'm so excited. Really happy
And
to be here.
I'm Erik Rydberg. I'm the media chair here at Young Eco-Socialists, and I've been following your campaign and how it's been coming along, and I'm really excited for you. And so we have a series of questions we would like to ask you. Starting with just, tell us a little bit about you, like where you're from, what's your background, that kind of stuff.
All that fun stuff. So I was born in Chicago, but I grew up in Hialeah, which is a very Cuban enclave of Miami in South Florida. So I lived there from the age of 5 till about when I moved out here 30 something or 29, because I moved here 5 years ago. I'm not good at math. So grew up in Hialeah, very first generation. My parents are Cuban immigrants. My mom came when she was younger, around 10 years old. They were fleeing domestic violence from my grandfather. So that's why they left. And then my dad came when he was 18 on the Mariel boat lift, which most people don't know what that is until I tell them, like, did you watch Scarface? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, so the way he came is how my dad came. So then people go, oh, that was shitty. I'm like, yeah, it was. So my dad went through that. Somehow mom and dad found each other in Chicago and had me, and then we moved to Miami. Grew up in Miami, Hialeah, pretty much my whole life. Went to college at University of Miami. While I was living there, I kind of always felt that things weren't right. They didn't seem like they were very fair. Even living in a very Latino enclave, it still seemed that you could tell the social class still mattered. And like the Cubans that came in the first wave with the money that were fleeing the communism were the ones that kind of ran the show in Miami, and the rest of us were, the balseros, the refugees, which was actually used as like an insulting term down there. Like they would say, oh, you're so refy. Oh my gosh. Looking back now, like, wow. So inappropriate. So I grew up with a lot of that kind of informing me of like, wow, you can, not all skin folk is kinfolk. I already started learning that, and how classism and those issues play a role in how people interact. And I picked up on that real young, real quick, and like got noticed that we were treated very differently than some of like the other Cuban Americans that I hung around with. When I was younger, I thought I wanted to be a doctor. I was like, I'm going to be a doctor. I'm going to be a doctor. I'm going to be a doctor. I was pre-med at University of Miami. I did my master's after that. I did 2 years of med school in St. Martin at a Caribbean American school, like one of those offshore schools, and hated it and left and started law school. I was like, I want to do something where I'm doing more for people. I don't feel like this is really going to take me where I want to be. And I started law school and I loved it. And one of the first things I learned in law school was how people like to say the system's broken. And I'm like, no, the system works exactly like it was intended to. This is exactly how the system was intended to work, and we're all getting screwed by it deliberately. That is not a mistake whatsoever. So a lot of that really like informed me wanting to get more politically, or like community politics like active. And then a lot when I moved to Denver, that was when the Mike Brown shooting had happened, and there was also some shootings here in Denver, like a lot of police brutality. Denver has some of the highest payouts for police brutality lawsuits, even though we're not one of the most dangerous cities. We pay out more than Baltimore. So it's just because our cops are way angrier, I guess, I'm not sure. So that really kind of incensed me and got me wanting to be more active. And then the types of law that I started practicing, doing criminal defense, immigration, and family law. And I also do child welfare. So I'm an attorney for children in the foster care system and stuff. So kind of all those pieces started showing me these numerous failings on so many levels. It's like our system fails us at every level from the ground up. People don't have housing, people don't have medical care, people don't have access to substance use treatment, people don't have access to some of the healthcare needs that they have. Educationally, they're neglected, especially communities of color in Denver. you've got kids with special needs or IEPs, and they're not getting the help that they need. And I started noticing it was affecting my sleep. I was like, I can't sleep at night knowing all of this. It's driving me up a wall. And I really did feel like I had to do something. I was like, if I know what the problem is and I have ideas to fix it, and it's not like I want somebody's money and that's why I'm not fixing it. I was like, well, maybe politics is, public service, not politics. Public service is where I need to go. And I had Andrea Merida tell me like, oh, your district councilman's termed out. I was like, what? He's what? So she's like, yeah, he's termed out, just kind of putting that on your radar. And I was like, oh, snap, let's do it.
Way to go, Andrea.
Yeah, way to go, Andrea. So she's the one who kind of got me going and decided I'm going to run. So I feel like my whole life was leading up to me understanding that the best use of my gifts or talents and passion would be in public service. And I think it's kind of come full circle now.
Well, I'm sure grateful. We need, in this complicated colonial system of law, we need revolutionary lawyers badly that can navigate this maze that they put together. And I'm sure your experience with family law, like from what I know, the differences between criminal and family law is like family law is a rough one where you see a lot of kind of families in tough situations. It seems like. Really kind of cuts to the core. I've kind of had experience in my life with people working in family law. So I remember them being kept up at night from some of the stories. I was kept up at night from some of the stories because
it's rough.
Yeah.
And when you hear parents telling you, I got sober, I did everything, I just can't get housing, why can't I get my kids back? And I'm like,
yeah.
That's just that's immoral to think that a person did everything they needed to get their kid back other than acquire housing, which is just so hard to do in the Denver metro. And well, everywhere at this point, it's not just here. And it's really disheartening that that's the case, that it's, we have these families being kept apart on these things that should just be provided for. They really just should be. Like if you need housing, there should be more public housing. That's a huge part of like my platform. Like I don't understand why Denver doesn't have more public housing. Just obscene to me.
Families got to go through all that trouble to navigate the state and the bureaucracy, and then at the end of the day, they can't get their kid back because there's a housing crisis in America, right?
Exactly. And they're like, well, maybe they can go to your grandma. We'll revisit this, and at least those are the better situations that there's family they can go to. In other instances, I'm out here, I've made arguments to the court where I'm like, well, being homeless isn't a safety concern. Because like we have a standard of a safety concern, like, is the child being emotionally harmed or physically harmed? And I'm like, well, I mean, being homeless sucks. That's completely true. But are they harming the child? Is that an outright harm? Are they denying them anything that they need? No, they're doing the best they can. They're jumping from shelter to shelter. That's not enough for me to say this kid can't go home, back, reunify.
The ones doing the harms are the one creating the economic situation where these people can't get into a house, right?
Exactly. I've had cases stay open for 6 months because they're waiting for housing. I'm like, I'm not doing anything. I'm in their life for no reason other than going, hi, did you get housing? They won't let me get off your case until you do.
It's an extremely overlooked statistic in America. There's all this talk about how we're the greatest country in the world, but when you compare us to all the other major nations, we have one of the largest, mind-bogglingly large child homelessness in the so-called greatest country in the world, right?
So we have that are unhoused, whether they're either jumping from shelters or living in the car, or they're housing unstable, where they're jumping from family member or like motel, like long extended stay motels. It's always some type of combination of that under that umbrella.
Right.
It's really disheartening that people are like, oh, what do you mean? Like, we have a huge housing crisis, and we have 2 homes per homeless person or something.
Right. Yeah.
Because we've had 2 empty homes per homeless person.
Yeah, there's it's California is a perfect example of how that is. Real estate out here has just been totally bought up. Even like the whole Airbnb system even contributes to it because they're, people just buying up property after property after property and like never living in it and maybe using it for Airbnb.
Here,
Yeah.
it's
So another question I want to ask you is just which we were kind of touching on is what issues are you passionate about? I mean, you kind of touched on those right there. Is there anything that comes as
yeah.
particularly passionate issue for you?
Denver in particular has a homeless camping ban, essentially a ban on survival, as we like to call it, because you're not free to be in your person property out in the community. The cops can take your stuff, they can charge you, they can arrest you. You have no, I mean, it's a human rights violation, it's a constitutional violation. Everything about the urban camping ban is just completely unjust, immoral, illegal. I'm a big proponent of the right to survive, which is a ballot initiative that actually got enough signatures to be on the ballot in Denver, which is super amazing. And that would overturn the camping ban and also provide some more rights to the unhoused, which I'm a big fan of. It's been hard on the campaign trail. A lot of people, there's a lot of money arguing that, it goes too far and it doesn't protect property. And I just laughed. I had one meeting where I was like, well, at the end of the day, if your argument to me is that, but what about the property? I'm going to tell you to kick rocks because what about the people? Like, I don't care about your
Right.
lawn. Like, it doesn't really matter. I don't care if they slept
The
on your
irony.
yeah.
It's always the people that own real estate. It's always the people, it's just like men trying to tell women about sexism. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's like
exactly.
you have no lived experience with what these people are going through, and you're the benefactor of their oppression. And of course, you're the one trying to argue against people living in homes, right?
Yeah, I'm just like, what? I said that to someone and they didn't, I could tell they didn't like it. I'm like, well, frankly, your argument doesn't hold water to me because I don't care. Your property rights do not outweigh a human's existence to me.
Right.
So we're never going to see eye to eye on this. And the lady was like, okay, and just like changed the subject.
I know the concept of property rights is a really tricky one for me. I'm Shiapomo, Indian Native American from California, and the concept of property to me has always been a baffling one because it's like, this European settlers came and they made their own laws about their property, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So it's like, the concept of property is relative from where you're standing.
Yeah, if you were the first one to take it from somebody else, now all of a sudden you can say it's property and there's rights that need to be followed.
Right.
It's a really weird little mental gymnastics that colonization and that it does. And it's insane to me how they're able to drink that Kool-Aid and do that, but they do. I mean, I was guilty of it at one point, I feel a lot of us politically evolve and some of us have our parents' politics when we're younger or like the politics of our neighborhood. And then as we get older, we're like, oh my God, I used to think these things.
Yeah. America, I mean, we're all born into this shell in America, this concept of American exceptionalism and, being the greatest country in the world
Yep.
and, patriotism and having pride and all these things. But then once you actually start to examine the shell, then you're like, wait a second, it's like being in the Truman Show or something with that movie with Jim Carrey.
On the Wizard of Oz, except instead of being some old white guy, it's like an evil person. I was like, ah!
It's a real deal. And so, I commend anybody that manages to, kind of get to that point where they, are able to break with indoctrination. I don't know how else to say it, but like from childhood, anybody that's able to get to that point to where they've questioned enough to where they get like to the point where it's like, hey, maybe I shouldn't just be, giving what I'm dealt and just accepting it. And let's look at it a little bit deeper. And with further examination, that's how we get radical lawyers that are trying to change things, and that's
Right.
exactly what it is. We need more. We need more Annies in this country. You know what I mean? So another question I want to ask you is, what brought you? Why? How did you get to the Green Party of the United States? What brought you to the Green Party?
Oh man, I guess I've always been kind of out there. I think my one of my first votes for president was for Nader. So
Nice.
I think it was just kind of like meant to be eventually. When I moved out to Colorado, I kind of saw the whole Bernie thing happening and I got intrigued. And then when I realized, I was like, not quite enough there. And then the Green Party in Denver is pretty strong, and Andrea again does an amazing job. So kind of saw that on Facebook and was drawn to it and met with her and learned more about it and was just like, this is home for me politically, ideologically.
Yes,
Words are
I am.
hard.
I'm a big admirer of Andrea's politics, and what she represents ideologically is it's been a struggle in the Green Party for a long time to have these like um, discussions about the difference between progressivism and socialism and these different these different schools of thought. That's basically how I came to the Green Party, was through the Bernie Sanders movement. I ran for a delegate for Bernie, and wasn't seeing, I was seeing a bunch of fraud taking place within the Democratic Party, and I was seeing, all this money being injected um, into this primary system, and all of the people that were in positions of power tilting the scales and like changing rules and doing all kinds of things to ensure that they got the candidate that would back up Wall Street, the candidate that would back up, the big banks, the fracking industry, um, fossil fuels in general, the military-industrial complex. So that's when I got to the point where I was fed up with that. Um, here comes Jill Stein and a Jamu Baraka talking about, um, Bernie was talking about free college tuition. Here comes Jill Stein and a Jamu Baraka talking about free college tuition, canceling student loan debt, which is a massive burden for the millennial generation to have to uh, graduate and then spend the next 20 years of our lives trying to pay off this massive debt when we're supposed to be trying to get a place, permanent place to stay, so we can raise a family, getting a car, a house, all those kind of things. Instead, we're locked in this debt in which we have to work 20 years of our lives to pry ourselves out of. So that's how I came to the Green Party. And it sounds like you had a similar experience in Denver.
Just
So,
lost.
oh, we did lose her. Okay, so we're waiting for Annie to come back on. And in the meantime, I guess I'll just talk a little bit more about the Green Party. So when I looked at the platform of the Green Party, that's what I saw. It was everything Bernie was talking about, but a little bit better, actually quite a bit better. The things that are causing the problems, the things that progressives are trying to address: income inequality, environmental destruction. Those things, yes, have been exacerbated by the creation of the corporatist state, the corporations, their corporate personhood, their ability to have human rights as a defense in the court of law. Yes, those things are very much making the problem worse than it's ever been before. But if you dig a little bit deeper, just like we were talking with Annie earlier, it's like we're all born into this concept, and then what we see on the outside is what we're kind of forced to accept. Once you start scratching at it, once you start turning over those stones, you start to see the root causes. So corporations and this massive extraction of wealth from the economy into this top echelon of the 1%. Corporations are just the evolution, the manifestation. It's a virtual get out of jail free card for the people behind the corporations. Now, these are the economic elite in the country, the bourgeoisie, the capitalists, right? They're the ones that have built these fictitious corporate persons that the corporation takes the fall for the capital. So the capitalist maintains their wealth, doesn't have to spend time in jail. So when I started digging into the Green Party and seeing this eco-socialist platform, I started saying to myself, well, what's the difference between what I was doing in the Bernie Sanders campaign with democratic socialism and eco-socialism? And when I started digging into that platform, I started to see some pretty stark contrasts. With eco-socialism, we're talking about abolishing capitalism. So this is the private ownership of the means of production, right? So the word means is particularly important because, anybody can make T-shirts, let's say, right? So are you a capitalist when I go to Humboldt State University and I sell a young eco-socialist of Humboldt State T-shirt? Does that make me a capitalist, that exchange of money? That is not capitalism. Right? Capitalism is the ownership of the means of production. So I'm not going to be selling any T-shirts without the cotton that is produced, right? So it's the people that own the ores, the resources, the water, the land. They're the ones that have the ownership of means of production. So nobody's going to be making any T-shirts. Nobody's going to be building railways. No one's going to be producing these bombs or these F-35 fighter jets. So that's kind of what we're talking about. Hi, Annie.
Sorry, I had everything connected to like my USB hub. This guy,
Yes.
it wasn't working, and I didn't realize the whole time it wasn't charging. So I'm like, no, it just turned black on me.
Good. I tried my best to fill the time with talking about eco-socialism.
Sure, it was lovely.
So what I really want is, I'm sure people have heard me talk about this a bunch, but what we want to know is, I think we left off. You were talking about Andrea Marita, talking about the Bernie Sanders movement. You were talking about moving to Denver and how you came to the Green Party. Do you want to pick up there?
Yeah. So, I feel like Andrea's been my fairy godmother out here and kind of like ushered me into the Green Party that way. Super grateful for it. And yeah, I've been involved ever since. Was part of the group that got Jill Stein out to Denver to do one of her big fundraiser talks here. I'm excited to see who the Green Party puts up for president for next year, but I'm also just really excited to be a Green and try at the very grassroots level and then have that go up to destroy that duopoly that we have. And I think that it's really hard to do it at those big national races. I know why we have to. I know, like politically as a party, why we have to run presidential candidates. And there's a ton of reasons. In some states, if you don't run them, you don't get any ballot access. There's a lot, right? That people don't even know. They're like, oh, why do Greens always run people? I'm like, look, we have reasons. But on top of that, but I think that like it's really important to run in these smaller, more local races that can really get to the meat and crux of a lot of these issues that can surpass some of those party politics and help a lot of the average individuals out there who don't even have the time or the ability because they're trying to just survive to think outside of that two-party system and realize, oh, there's other options out there. So that's a big other reason why I'm running as a Green, as a socialist Green very proudly, is because I know there's a lot of people, particularly in Denver, who are about that life. They would love that, they want that, but they don't realize it's out there. And they don't realize it because people don't run on these local levels. And they don't realize that they're viable candidates. They just hear Jill Stein and they're like, oh, who's that lady? I don't know, whatever. I have to vote for this one or Trump's going to win. And they go through that. And they don't realize that, okay, well, that's there, but we can start making a really effective amount of change at these local grassroots levels where in time, voting third party for a president doesn't sound far-fetched. Or if we can get, destroy that duopoly all entirely, get rid of the
Mhm.
primary system, get ranked choice voting. I mean, I was just
Yes.
tear it all down.
Yes. Yeah. And rebuild a better, a more efficient, more inclusive system, right? So it's
Definitely.
not just, it's not just, I mean, the system that is in place is corrupt and it needs to be taken down. But the best way to do that is by bringing something else. One comes down, the other comes up. We'll get proportional representation. We'll get like ranked choice voting, for you said. I feel fortunate being in Humboldt County. This last election cycle, we had a really good. We elected 5 Greens locally, and we already had about 10. So it was like there's a really heavy green area here in Northern California, and we were able to do things like we removed the first presidential statue in history of President William McKinley, who was just horrible in the Philippines and Puerto Rico, and you know what I mean. It was all started over Cuba, like Cuba. It was really it's great to see what you can accomplish, but starting from the ground up is critical, right? And I think what a lot of people don't know is that there are a lot of Greens on local. There's hundreds of Greens that are elected throughout the country
Yeah.
on the local level. And so when people, there's a lot of people I hear that too. That well, every 4 years, that's when I hear about a Green, right? So there is work to be done. We need more on the local level, but we didn't get all this ballot access.
Out of nowhere.
Yeah, we didn't get it out of nowhere. It took years and years, a lot of people running, a lot of people doing ballot signatures, and that's why we're the fourth largest party in the whole country. And we're the only one that doesn't take corporate money, right? So it really is an amazing feat for the left to actually have a party in existence with the ballot access that could win the general election if everybody just got savvy to the reality that we can actually do this. So it's candidacies like yours that let people know that it's real.
Yeah, it helps bring that viability and legitimacy to it, even though it is viable and legitimate. For some reason, we have to prove it more and more. So whatever we
I know
can do.
it's like everybody hates the two-party system, but then when you're like, hey, we actually have a vehicle, they're like, no,
No,
no, too good to be true.
can't do
Electoral college, there's
it.
something somehow.
It won't work. We can't.
So speaking of, I love that you said running as a Green as a socialist Green, that because that means so much to me, and is by far one of the biggest reasons, other than the structure of the party, why I'm here. This value system, this class analysis is really a big reason why I'm here. So one of the other questions I have for you is, the Green Party has an eco-socialist platform,
Yep.
and that platform rejects both capitalism and like state authoritarian, like statism, a top-down hierarchical authoritarian state type situation, in favor of worker ownership of the means of production and grassroots democracy. So my question would be, how is that platform, anti-capitalism, also anti-authoritarian,
Mhm.
statism? How is that relevant to like the socio-economic issues that your community is facing?
Yeah, I mean, I think definitely like the socialist issue, like the wanting to be more socialist and wanting to get rid of capitalism is huge in Denver. Denver has been, I mean, one of those areas where we've had a huge rent crisis, housing, like rent and housing in general, whether it be public or being able to buy it, right? Like there's just so much expanding income inequality in Denver. And it was something that was done deliberate. And that's something that, I mean, I get a lot of pushback on because people like to go, oh, the market, oh, the system. I'm like, oh, woe is you. No, you lie. That's a willful choice, right? Same thing with gentrification. That's part of that. People say, oh, gentrification is inevitable. And no, growth and development as a community is great. Gentrification is doing that growth without any insight or any input from the community to just, you know, extract profit from everybody there until you suck them dry and kick them out. That's what gentrification is, right? Like that's not, and that's what we're seeing in Denver. We're seeing a lot of that coming to fruition here, and it was deliberately done. And a lot of leaders want to say, oh, everybody keeps moving here for pot. I'm like, this has been going on for 20 years. Pot's not been legal for 20 years in Colorado, so stop. They have been proactively courting outside enterprise, outside business, and developers to create a Denver for the few and not for everyone here. And that goes for everyone that was born and raised in Denver, as well as people like me who moved out here thinking, oh, I'm going to come to this beautiful progressive place in the mountains. I'm going to smoke weed legally and change the world. We're going to just make every place like Denver. You know, and people moved out here with that intention. They didn't come out here to suck Denver dry. They came out here because they thought Denver was going to be that home that they had been searching for that wasn't where they were at. You know, so those aren't the bad guys either, like some of the leadership in Denver likes to make it out to be. They like to say, well, all of you transplants. I'm like, well,
Yeah.
I don't know. Some of us transplants have been doing a lot of more work for like the criminal justice system and like economic reform than a lot of you natives, starting from our mayor down. So like, I don't buy that. You know, so, and that is because it fits in that capitalist structure. Capitalism doesn't have any shame, it doesn't have any boundaries, it doesn't have, there's never a low too low for that system. And there's never, you know, they can suck money, suck the blood out of anything and everyone, and that's what it does.
Yep.
And it's doing that in Denver, and it's doing it in a really, really aggressive way that's fracturing the community. And it's really sad because for the most part, when you're not like, you know, when you're kind of in like that superficial, shallow, just having fun mood and you're here, people are amazing. It's such a beautiful community. Like people are great. They're so friendly. They're so happy. They love it. They love being here. And you can tell that the vast majority of like the average people in Denver want things to be better. Most people don't agree with the camping ban. They don't agree with the mayor we have. Like the average citizen doesn't, but the 1% of Denver that kind of still enforces the status quo, and that's the percentage that votes in these muni elections, they're the ones kind of feeding off of this polarization in Denver. And they're trying to spin it as like natives and transplants, and really it goes back to this capitalist, you know, system of 1%, you know, the people holding the money and the workers that are making it possible for them. And that's really the issue. And it's getting the average Denver person to recognize that that's the lens to look at it through. Yep. And that's sometimes the issue, is trying to get people to realize, like, just change the shade of glasses, just change the lens of how you're looking at this. You're looking at it the way they want you to, versus the way that would unify us all to realize, like, they're the bad guy, just vote them out. So, you know, and that really is a lot of like my platform, but also just like my envisioning of like a utopian society without borders or boundaries and all these, you know, I guess I might not have that in Denver, but that's definitely part of the big picture one day, right?
There's some things you said there that just, you know, rang a serious bell with me, you know. One is that you said that people move in there, like when I moved to this progressive town, that's the way I felt moving into Humboldt, right? And just like when I moved to Humboldt, I'm like, oh, there it is, the capitalist state, the capitalist club, the bureaucracy that protects the capitalist, that's owned by the capitalist. It's there enforcing it. It's doing it here in Humboldt. It's doing it there in Denver and San Jose. San Jose is just awful gentrification of on an epic level, like, but it's happening virtually everywhere because the system, capitalism, that's what it produces, right? Another thing that you said that just really like you know, borderline triggered me in a sense, because it's like they're calling themselves I've heard this argument a bunch about transplants and natives, right?
I hate it. Where do they get off with that word?
So because I just heard it because we removed the statue here in Arcata. And it's like, you know, all these people come from out of town. It was probably an epic moment where there was like hundreds of people going to the Arcata City Council, people from tribes all over the state, all over the country, and you know, the locals, right? The locals are like, oh, these people aren't even from here. You know, I'm a native, been here my whole life, 30 years. The statue's been here 100 years, you know. And so the irony in that being the argument for the border, that being the argument for, you know, maintaining the capitalist control, that, you know, if you've been here 30 years or if your family's been here 100 years, you're a native, right? And so the reality of the situation is that unless you're, Native American, unless you're indigenous to this continent, which, uh, everybody, majority of people in South America, Mexico, that, Native Americans, First Nations in Canada,
Yep.
like my archaeological sites go back 12,500 years, right? So for somebody who's like, your statue's been here for 100 years, that's just like, yeah, 30 years, you're a native. So it's like, we got to get beyond that concept, that the whole, prideful ownership. I think that's sort of the root of where ownership goes off the rails and property ownership goes off the rails, because it's creating that class division, like somehow I have hierarchy over you because you only been here for 5 or 10 years or whatever it is. We're all human beings. We all need to, get this together. And, you know, if we're going to stop climate destruction and catastrophe, like we all got to start getting our oars in the water at the same time and working together, right? And so that brings me to the next question for you, which is, how is the ecosystem in your area, and how is community impacted by either how capitalism affects your ecosystem, or how the statist, state, local, or federal government policies, like how is there issues on the ecology level
Yeah.
that you'd like to talk about?
The Denver metro area. So aside of capitalism, like forcing people out of their homes, we do have an environmental crisis. There is a lot of drilling, there's a lot of fracking, coal, oil, like there's a lot of that, and it's not obviously happening in Denver proper. It's not happening right by Mile High Stadium, but it's close enough that not only is it affecting Denver, like in other districts, like District 9 and stuff, a little bit more northwest, but also the surrounding counties, which I get it, I'm running on a city level, but it matters. And a lot of these areas are going through these processes because they're doing that to support Denver, right? Like I'm sure a lot of the oil and gas and coal that they're getting out is because Denver needs it, because there's only a few thousand people living out there. They're not doing it for themselves. So it still ties in, that the need ties in, right? So it's still, if it's not affecting Denver, then maybe it's Denver's fault. But either way, they're connected. And that's a huge thing. I mean, like Denver has a D- rating from like the American Lung Association. That's ridiculous. Like that's crazy. And, and oil companies are starting to develop like in far east Denver, and they're kind of little by little, they're coming and they're coming. We tried to get on a state level propositions done to affect fracking, to try to keep it from going as far deep and out as it was, and it didn't happen. But at least all the candidates, the more progressive candidates, have all agreed to sign on in Denver to like not agree to any fracking or to ban it outright in city proper and stuff like that. So there are some issues that, of course, tie into capitalism. We're raping our land to do things to keep fossil fuel industry and all these industries alive that don't need to continue existing.
Mm.
And I get when people in labor freak out. I'm a huge supporter and proponent of labor, and I would never want to leave this industry without ushering them into the new industry and getting them that training and that transition. Like I get that has to be done. But it's got to be done. Like we need to get out. Like there's no reason why we're not on complete like solar and air. Like it just doesn't make any sense. My apartment building is a mixed income building through the Housing Association, which is another conversation, because Denver Housing Association is not actually a public entity. It's this weird pseudo private partnership thing that's completely messed up. But every once in a while, they have a great project like the ones I live in that were done amazingly well. And I don't pay for utilities. I don't think you can see it. There's like a little energy control center back there against that wall under the March calendar. And the whole building is completely set up with solar panels.
Excellent.
Like certain walls of like the whole unit, like the whole building, and none of us pay for utilities. If you get internet, you get internet, but everything's included. And because, most of it's done in a very highly efficient way. So I'm like, well, why are all the buildings being built like that? If you're able to do it for mine, I'm still paying market rate because, obviously, rightfully so, I don't qualify for like fixed income, but I still get that benefit of the building, which means it can be done.
Oh,
So
it can absolutely be done.
it can be done in a way where you're going to still turn a profit. So what's the issue here, other than you're just too scared and don't have the political will to tell that energy company, pick rocks, we're going to go this way. All right.
Right. It's the lobbyist influence, all that corporate money that they want to get for their campaigns, because going green is actually cheaper, saves us all a bunch more money, saves the planet, saves our health, right? And on that note, I'd like to mention Monday on the 11th, Howie Hawkins and I believe Jill Stein are having a live stream about how to run on the Green New Deal, the Ecosocialist Green New Deal, right?
Just Howie on that call.
So one of the things I've always said when I was talking about jobs, and I've been shocked when I run into people on the right. They're like, "Oh, you guys want to kill jobs, kill jobs." Like, you don't understand. Like, we want to create more jobs than you've ever dreamed of. You know what I mean? We're going to talk about 25 million new jobs in like 6 months. Like, there'll be such a plethora of jobs through a federal jobs guarantee that it's going to make your head spin with your little fracking pipeline that employs 1,000 people or something. Like, we're going to put millions and millions of people to work building apartments like the one you're living in, right? Or housing like that.
Exactly.
And in the long run, we're going to save money on healthcare because we're not going to have the lung association giving Denver a D-, right?
Exactly.
It's a big deal. There's a reason why the Green New Deal is so popular right now. And part of that is because the media system and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez winning and being able to get into that capitalist media structure and actually being able to mention it. That's a huge part of it. But also, the Green Party has been pushing the Green New Deal since 2008, right?
Yeah.
So it's a decade-long struggle of trying to get it into people's heads what we're talking about.
Definitely.
I have more questions for you. One was, how can we help you as the Young Eco-Socialists? We're the official youth caucus of the Green Party of the United States. And I'd like to know, what can we do either as the youth caucus or GPUS in general to help you either build your campaign, or is there specific things that people need to know about? We have linked your donation. We have phone banking.
That's the big one.
Yeah, anything that comes to mind, how we can help you build your local Green Party or build a Young Eco-Socialist chapter at your colleges, or what are the things that we can do to be helpful for you?
Sharing the donation link, not gonna lie, that's always helpful. Even though this is very grassroots and I'm not out here raising $20,000, $30,000. Mailers cost $2,500. Flyers cost about $500. Like, that's money, and it is what it is, right? So definitely any fundraising helps. Donations definitely help. But also sharing events that are, like, even if you're not here, but sharing posts on Facebook, sharing that kind of stuff where it gets a little bit more steam behind the movement is always helpful. And then I will have some remote phone banking that will start next week. So there'll be call lists that people can do, and it'll be Tuesdays and Thursdays, but I can also just leave it whenever people want because it's remote. So calling is a big one. This is one of those races, again, the win number is pretty small, even factoring in for like higher voter turnout because of the political milieu right now, and because there's so many people running, we assume the turnout will be a little higher. It'll probably still be embarrassingly low. So calling is huge. Calling is huge, and the most touches you get with voters and the most per voter, the higher the chance that they'll vote for you, right? So between mailing, phone banking, and seeing them in person by knocking and going to events, those are huge. And then I think collaboratively, as like just young Greens, we can all continue what we're doing of working together across the country, promoting each other. I can't vote for somebody out in California, but I can help put that issue out there, bring attention to what their platform is, and make donations, because we all need to support each other.
Yes.
But if the goal, which I know it is, if our goal is to become this uprising that will swell and overtake eventually the entire Green Party, and then hopefully be this legitimate, huge third party system, like, outside of the two-party system. The way to do that is to help each other. And when California puts out a ballot measure or a candidate in something that lines up with these values, not like some of these weird outliers that say they're green, but they're, off the
I know what you're talking about.
But like the legit ones, and we know who we all are. Like we have to, doing these types of events and supporting each other is really important, because as we grow and we mature as, the youth caucus, and we become almost like our establishment, but anti-establishment, like we need to be supportive of each other to keep growing it. Like, so when that generation ahead of us that's done so much starts to take a step back, we can be doing more than what they set up for us. We're not able to do that if we're not all working together. California can do something, Denver and Colorado can do something, maybe something's happening in the Northeast somewhere, in New York or Boston. But if we're not all working as a collective, it's going to stay in those little pockets, and we're not going to create a big wave of change that we want. So I think in general, we just need to keep supporting each other and keep pushing and prodding our friends and people that we meet. I know you're not happy with the two-party system. I know you're not really into that. Have you looked at the Greens? Have you thought about it? I mean, we don't need to be Jehovah's Witnesses about it, but at the same time, have you heard the news?
Absolutely. Speaking of working in collaboration, I noticed that you picked up an endorsement from the ISO in Denver, right?
Denver, and Denver DSA, both of them. Yep.
And DSA. Okay, so I know that labor, there was some statistics done, and the unions are sick and tired of the Democratic Party, right? The millennial generation is sick and tired of this two-party system, right? They're sick and tired of it, right? Here in California, we recently made some bylaws changes in our state party so that we could cross-endorse the Peace and Freedom Party. They're the other socialist party that has ballot access. So we endorsed about 4 of their candidates. They endorsed about 5 of ours, right? So, and we have Socialist Party USA here. I know in Florida, there's African People's Socialist Party on the East Coast, right? And there's cross endorsements going on there. So it's like, I just love what you said about, when we're all we're all going in the same direction. We need to get out of the silos, right? And use the vehicles we have, like the Green Party has this ballot access, which is a really awesome thing. But we shouldn't be afraid to pull our socialists from that might be working in their silo and say, hey, look, we working together is how we do it, because there's continuity there between our belief system, as far as capitalism and income inequality and these things. We just need to start building on each other's foundations. And so everything you just said rung really heavily with me. I have a question that's coming out of our live stream, and it's about Venezuela. What is your take on this situation going on between like the United States, Colombia, and like Venezuela?
I mean, I think overall, I'll definitely say it's not our place to get involved, and we're only getting involved for oil. Quite frankly, I feel like this conversation isn't going to be fruitful unless we start there, like with that being like the baseline premise or understanding. And I think that that's hard for a lot of people to get, because they hear, oh, Maduro, and he's this, and the people are starving, and they're not factoring in other issues like sanctions and stuff that kind of create that environment for the people to be suffering under that leadership. That may not be that leadership's fault entirely, right? And so they kind of keep it in a vacuum, don't realize all those other issues playing in, and then they think, oh, we're just going to go and save the day. And I'm like, no, that's not what we do. We come in, we rape and pillage and take what we want, and then we leave a raft of destruction, in our wake. Like, that's what we do. So fundamentally, for me, like, it's just not our place to get involved, because we're not getting involved with any real true sense of like wanting to help or do anything. And it doesn't seem like they want our help. It seems that the people people who have left Venezuela, kind of like the first wave of Cubans, that first wave of Venezuelans that left before Maduro with what's his face, and I can't remember. But you know what I mean? Like they're the ones who are, they're the ones sitting in the States talking. There you go. They're like, oh, we got to get rid of this guy, and this is terrible, and look at what country and my people. I'm like, well, but do you know the full story, or are you just like regurgitating what you're hearing? So I think honestly, that is shit complicated down there? Hell yeah. Do I know the full story about like Maduro, and is it really like a valid election or what's going on? I don't follow it closely enough, and I don't live there, so I'm not on the street to really know what's happening. But based on what's coming out and what I'm hearing and seeing, I'm going, oh, this is us trying to do another like coup. We do not need to be involved in this. Like, run, get out. Why are we doing this? And it's like, oh, it's because we want oil. That's why. There's resources to be taken.
They have the most oil of any. They have this massive reserve. On that note, I got a message from Chris Blankenhorn, who's helping us run our live stream here, that we actually have the Young Eco-Socialists of the Green Party of the U.S. We actually have a Venezuela packet. People can look at. Anybody who's viewing, you can go to yesgp.org /hands-off-Venezuela. So yesgp.org/hands-off-Venezuela. We've compiled a whole bunch of information there, and it's just there's a whole bunch of facts that are just being completely left out of the 5 corporations that own all of our media or whatever, right?
Exactly, yeah.
Nobody seems to know that we've frozen all of Venezuela's billions of Venezuela's dollars in and all the money they've made in the UK, in America. There's billions of dollars that they don't have, that they could be feeding their people with, but we have just stolen all of their oil resources. There's so much. I mean, most people don't even know that Maduro has already been attempted assassination by drones, or they don't know the CIA has been caught, getting weapons in there. There's like people. The information in America is just not getting out there. So it's definitely out there.
And deliberate, right? Same thing as Cuba. In the 80s and 90s, everyone talked about how, and I'm not necessarily, I have a lot of family that are very torn about how the revolution went down and how a lot of people were assassinated that weren't necessarily property owners, but they didn't think this was the right way to go about it. So it's not black and white. There is a lot of gray when a revolution happens. And I think that we can say that and still be in agreement that, this type of economic structure would work better than capitalism. I don't think we have to be so myopic, and like obtuse that we can't say that. But I think we also have to say that there's a reason why some of these turn into dictatorships. And it's also because, we as America go and stick our nose into these other countries' businesses. We put these embargoes, we set them up to fail.
Yes.
And then, and then we go, see, it doesn't work. We told you, but you got to be capitalist. Look what happens. And you're like, well, but did you ever give them a fair chance to do it?
No. They did 56. They did 56 interventions to make sure it didn't work out, right?
No, it's crazy how just the mental gymnastics people will do to keep certain facts out of their mind, to not have to think differently on something than they've already, to think outside of what their construct already thinks that situation is. They already think communism's bad, this person's bad, they're a dictator, we need to go and bring them freedom. Let's do it. Right. And you're like, oh my gosh, no.
Like compare it to us, right? Like, Jimmy Carter's, they have that biometric voting system down there in Venezuela. It's been hailed as one of the best voting systems in the world.
Yeah.
Like Jimmy Carter said that. And like, just to be fair, like no other country said that America had to have new elections when it was proven that the DNC cheated Bernie Sanders, right? Like nobody's holding us to our fair election standards.
Go back to Warren Bush.
Yeah, or Warren Bush.
And not one other country came in and said, we're going to bring troops because this isn't American, this isn't democracy, it's not freedom, we're going to go bring you your freedom, America. They robbed you of that gore. Like, what? No one did that. Like,
no, they did. There's no situation that's so bad that it can't be made worse. by America getting involved. So it's true, and then another thing I'd like to just touch on is that, we did all this work with this McKinley statue here in Humboldt County. I know I keep coming back to my own work, but I think it's relative because, if you look at how McKinley colonized places like Samoa, it all started with like the Treaty of Friendship and Commerce in like 1887 or 1787 or whatever, right? Like it always starts with this, here's some humanitarian aid, right? And once we get in there, right? Exactly. Surprise! Like, capitalist in the box.
Yeah. Exactly what it is, and it's terrible, and it's sometimes it's really hard, like that when I'm not a fan of Ariana Grande. I think she's out there blackfishing and trolling 24/7, trying to act like a woman of color when she's not. But I will say, when Homegirl got in trouble for saying, "Ugh, I hate America, I hate Americans," like I felt that a little bit sometimes as like
right.
like, oh my God, why do we do what we do? Why are we like this?
Right.
Like a whole, because it's like, oh, America.
Right. So, the lens I have, I think is something I want to share. Is just, when you're looking at it, like, why is it like so many people hate America? Why is it that, like, when you're in other countries, like a lot of Americans, are like, no, I'm from Canada, or you know what I mean? Like, yeah, you're almost afraid to say, So, if you look at colonialism, you look at the American structure, a lot of this system that we're dealing with is geared to like make you intentionally break with like your roots and your culture and where you came from. Like we're Americans, we're not Cubans, we're not Kashaya-Pomos, we're not, French or Russian or Italian, or you know what I mean? It's all about getting under this patriotic system. And what is the American dream? It's like the white picket fence, 2 cars in the garage, a microwave, a fridge. It's like, it's this American dream that promotes the capitalist system, right? So it's like we think we're getting the good life when really we're just getting the crumbs and our labor value is being extracted out, right? And then so the patriotism thing, it's all there designed to make us feel pride in this system that is actually taking from us. It's taking our culture, it's taking where we came from, it's taking our languages, it's taking literally our money and our labor value and all that. So, that's my list.
Everything. Well, and I think it ties in sometimes to religion and like some of the more like Christianic like based religions where, and I think that happens also with why a lot of religious people tend to be conservative in the States, but maybe not in other places. And I think it's that whole like prosperity gospel and this whole, you're going to get yours when you die.
Right.
Just do what God wants for you here. Fuck everybody else. You'll be fine. You'll be fine when you die. It's kind of like, it's like this weird betting of like greed is good as long as you're a Christian and you go to heaven and everything will be fine and just follow the rules and you'll die like a good person, but screw everybody else.
Right.
So get yours. Do you get yours? Take care of your family. That's all that matters.
Right.
Holding all their minds, we say in Spanish. And screw everybody else. And it's to me because whether you're religious or not, I mean, I'm agnostic. I don't believe, I wouldn't say I'm atheist. I would say I'm agnostic. I don't think we know, and I don't think we have the capability to know or understand. So I don't spend a lot of time thinking about it. But it bothers me to think that whether you think that this is the one go around on this rock you get, whether you think that there is an afterlife or not, whether you think you reincarnate or not, there's this fundamental understanding that the experience you have right now is the one time you'll experience it. Mm-hmm. The only time you'll have that experience with the people around you. Like this will be the only time I'm on this planet talking to you right now with my dog in this apartment.
Right.
And if this is the one time we're going to share this collective experience, why aren't we making it better? Why are we sitting up? Why are we living this machine? We're in this wheel that keeps turning, crushing all of our, our real dreams. Our real dreams is happiness. It's family. it's waking up every day and thinking, oh, I'm alive and I don't have something to worry about that's going to ruin my existence today.
Right.
And it's like, we all really want that, and we can all
Yeah.
have it, and we all sit in this like mental cell of like, well, but it can't be done because, you know, people are fundamentally bad because the Bible said so, or people are fundamentally like that because that's human nature, which it's not, but whatever. Like, it's this really disgusting thing of the system that pits us against each other or makes us cold and indifferent to one another. And it's really sad, because if you actually do believe the things you believe, what you should realize is that we should be working collaboratively and collectively to make this one go around better for everyone we meet and touch.
Right.
And it's just really sad to me to think that people live on this planet thinking, well, I don't care about the other guy, I got to worry about me and get mine. And I get why people in desperate circumstances feel that way, but they're not the ones who are always like that. People in desperation are the most giving. You know, when we were poor, my poor friends were the ones that helped me more, never the ones with money. You know, when I didn't have anywhere to sleep in Denver because my ex had kicked me out and I was homeless, all my broke ass friends were the first ones saying, you can crash on my couch, not any of my bougie ass lawyers who had a guest room. Right? So, I mean, it's always like, you know, we're always the ones taking care of each other. And it's so frustrating that that upper crust that has the means to make things better are the ones to say, oh, well, no. That's human nature, and that's how it is in the Bible, and I'm just gonna do what I do, and when I die, it'll be fine. I don't understand this.
Yeah, no, so for me, you know, I had the experience of growing up with, you know, Christianity in my household and like our indigenous belief structure, right? And so the conflict between the two could not have been as more stark. And I think one of the biggest things for me, and why, you know, not to, you know, I'm not trying to put down like, you know, everybody believes in Christianity or anything. Just saying for me, you know, one of the biggest things that I had a problem with in the Bible was that they're talking about the whole world being destroyed, right? In the Revelation or whatever. Like, it's going to happen. There's nothing we can do to stop it, right? And on the other hand, I'm getting, we need to preserve Mother Earth for our next 7 generations and for their next 7 generations and so on. So those two things really aren't very compatible. So it's like, you know, in order to preserve our planet, you know, for our next generations, our mother, our Earth, like literally our relative, like we're related to non-human relatives, plants, water, animals. Like it's up to us to be the stewards that like make sure that we don't destroy it. And on the other hand, if you're like everything you're doing is for the afterlife and for reward that somehow you earn after or whatever, or the world, it's like, you know, when people say like, oh, I can't wait for Jesus to come back, right? It's like, well, that happens because the world's destroyed. So I'm like, I can wait. Like I personally want the planet to go on for as long as possible, so as many of my generations. So I hear your, you know, I hear what you're saying. And so is there any questions that I may not have asked that you would, is there anything particular that you would like to talk about? We've been on for about an hour, so I just want to give you an opportunity to maybe have a discussion that I haven't put forth.
I guess I'll be a little more narrow about the race and about why I'm running, or why I really hope, you know, Denver my district ends up supporting me. I think that fundamentally we are at a crossroads, and not just in Denver. I think we see it in Chicago, where, you know, there's a bunch of, you know, socialists that might end up on their city council. There's going to be the first Black mayor, regardless of what happens there. I mean, it's happening. This tide is starting to turn. And I think that we're at like this precipice of being able to really take it somewhere and start changing the track that we've been on, or we can hesitate, think that the little bit that we've done is enough, and stick with the status quo. And Denver can't afford it, and District 3, where I'm running, can't afford it. We're on the cusp of being completely gentrified. It's coming, you know, you see the projects coming, you see the stuff when you go to the neighborhood association meetings, the developers are there trying to get input, you know.
Right.
And it's so vital for individuals to know, not just in this race, but in their home, in wherever they're at for their city council races too, or however their municipal elections are, to realize that like fundamental change starts from the ground up. You can't set the tone up, down. You set the tone down, up. And that's the biggest thing that we have. We have a huge opportunity in Denver. We've got 3 DSA-backed candidates in 3 different district races. I mean, to have 3 socialists on city council would be huge.
Mm-hmm.
Would be freaking huge. You know, and that would, Denver is poised to be a city. It's so popular and it's like a buzzword almost. And everybody's talking about what's going on in Denver all the time. Like if we can do that and portray that image of like, yo, we've got some radical badasses on city council that are anti-capitalist, anti-establishment, anti-corporate interest in money and politics. And that can really set a huge tone for other cities and other parts of the country. So it wouldn't only just help Denver, but again, it's that whole collective movement of like, you need it everywhere to start building up everywhere. And I really hope to, you know, get support from people outside of Denver who believe in that same message and help them at their hometowns also. But then my homies here, I hope they realize to get out there with me and to knock and get the vote out, because I mean, that's really how we change things. And we're at a point where we can do a lot of good. There's a lot of good ideas. There's a lot of potential. There's so much that can be done. And I'm ready to do it. I'm not scared. I've told people before, like, this is not a springboard for a bigger office for me. At the end of the day, I can go back to being a lawyer, and I'm fine with that. Right. I love being a lawyer, too. Like, I'm doing this because I feel compelled to do bigger and better for my community, because I worry no one else will. Not because I want to be on city council. So, you know, it's like I'm doing it because I feel like this obligation to give the most of me back to my community. And this is where I feel is the best way I can do that. But I mean, I will be fine going back to law. I'm doing it because I know we're at a point where it's urgent for people of those right values, that the right political will to not sell out, to not punk out. It's huge, and we're there. We have people out there running that have that will, that have that backbone. And we need to support them. We need to not be scared. We need to not say, oh, but we have to vote for the lesser evil, or who cares? It's all the same shit anyway. Right. We got to have more faith in ourselves. Yep. And I want people to remember, have more faith in ourselves, in yourself, and the collective us. You know, we can do this. We have done amazing things as the left in America, and we can continue to do more if we just continue to have faith in ourselves.
I think there's a major silver lining. The lesser of evil thing has created such lack of confidence in the political system that, you know, 50% of the registered voters don't even vote. And then, like, that's not even the people that aren't registered to vote, right? Like, we're talking about, like, probably 60-70% of America doesn't vote, or something crazy like that, right? And it's just like some napkin math or whatever. But the reality of the situation is, like, that creates a situation where you need like about 2,500 votes to win, right? That is incredibly doable, right?
Yeah.
So for the people in your community and for the people that are watching from outside your community, like, we need to take that into consideration, is that, like, literally this is ours for the taking. If we go knock the doors, we make the phone calls. If we get 2,500 people to vote for Annie Martinez, we're going to have a young eco-socialist in Denver City Council, and there's nothing that we need more, you know, because the ecological clock is ticking, right? So we need it on the local level in Denver. We need it in California. We need it in New York. We need it in Puerto Rico. We need it everywhere. So, you know, I just want to take this moment to kind of reiterate some of the things we mentioned earlier. On March 11th, Howie Hawkins is actually going to be doing a conference call. So on the Eco-Socialist Green New Deal with the Young Greens. So if you go to the Young Eco-Socialists of the Green Party US Facebook page, the 11th, Howie Hawkins is going to be doing a conference call. So for those who don't know, Howie Hawkins was the first candidate to ever run on the Green New Deal in America. He's a devout eco-socialist. He's a co-founder of the Green Party US. So we very much want to hear from him. So check us out on the 11th here at Young Greens. Also, for folks that are anti-imperialist, and see what's going on in Venezuela, please go to our website, yesgp.org, yesgp.org/handsoffvenezuela. We have a packet there, lots of information for everybody. And last but not least, we have to get you to go to AnnieForDenver.com.
Yes.
And go click that donation link, right? Like she said, we $2,500 for mailers, 500s for leaflets. It takes money to get this stuff done, but it doesn't take a lot of money. It takes a little bit of money and a lot of people power, and that's what we need. And candidates like Annie are the ones that are going to give us the change we need to protect our environment, to heal our economy, and to heal our people. So thank you so much, Annie, for stepping up and doing all the great work that you're doing in Denver.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It's an honor to be able to do the work and be able to just do it. People are struggling and they're trying to meet their most basic needs, and it's hard for them to get involved and do more. And I respect that. So I'm lucky enough to be in a position where I've got a roof over my head and some frozen food in the fridge. So who the hell am I to not be doing more,
Well, please send our love to the Denver Green Party and all of your allies out there, ISO, DSA, everybody who's looking for that radical shift and doing that work and helping you out. Let them know that they got an ally here.
That's what's up. And if anyone wants to run for local office anywhere and they want to reach out to me, I'm always very available and willing to help with whatever. I mean, I don't know how helpful my advice would be, but if anyone just wants to ask questions or vent, I'm here too.
You got it. We'll send them your way.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Annie. Is there anything else before we go?
Just pa'lante todos, forward everyone.
Oh. All right. Much love to you. Go knock them dead out there.
Yeah. Thank you. Bye.
We'll see you next time.